Good morning everyone and welcome to this new episode of the Quarter of Hour Cinema. Today I am joined by Mrs. Wilson, renowned critic of Japanese animated films. We are lucky to receive in duplex the one and only Mr. Miyazaki. The episode of the day is about his film made in 1984, Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. Good morning, how are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
To begin, I will give you a short summary. So, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is a film set in a post-apocalyptic universe where the inhabitants of the small Valley of the Wind try to survive between the advance of the toxic forest and the aggression of their powerful neighbors of the Tolmec Empire. The princess of the valley, Nausicaa, the eponymous heroine, is animated by a great love for her neighbor and for life and tries to bring peace between the different factions and between man and nature. The film is very touching because of its story but also its production. Not only the music but also the drawings and more particularly the landscapes are very immersive.
Indeed, the music was created specially for the movie by Joe Hisaishi. So he's a great Japanese composer who through his music makes us clearly feel the emotions of the characters.
And I heard the drawings are all handmade, right?
Yes, they are, which is like an insane amount of work. We're all so overworked sometimes. We even fall asleep on our desks.
I understand. Wasn't it too hard to make those films, be it physically or mentally? How did you keep yourself and your coworker invested?
Well, it is sometimes a lot, but we go through it all together. We all have the same goal. So we're like a big family at this point, and we take turns making this for everyone, for example, me included.
So one thing I really enjoyed visually about Nausicaa, apart from this beautiful landscape, were the big war machines. I didn't know that an artist like Mr. Miyazaki could also create things that are supposed to be out of his range of expertise, and on top of that make them look poetic. I was really surprised.
That is very true, and I think that you're actually onto something because it's well known that Miyazaki's movie made a lot of plans and references to the 19th century. Am I right, so?
Yes, you are quite right. I'm glad you noticed. And in Japan there are many lovers of technological progress, and of course I am one of them too. English in particular has a certain magic to it, don't you agree?
Yes,
yeah, sure.
in a way.
Yeah, and so I find it fascinating that these huge metallic engines are able to fly into the sky. It has always been a dream of mine to fly, and for me it symbolizes freedom in a way. And if we can push our boundaries that far, we can probably do anything if we put our minds to it.
Yeah, Nausicaa flying on a little glitter was such a joy to see. I could almost feel your passion coming through, and believe me, I'm not an aviation fan, but you made me love it.
Yeah, I relate so much. Just look at this scene, the angles, the music, the way the wind flows through her hair and clothes is just magic, and I fall in love.
But is there a particular reason for this passion?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but technological progress is part of the Japanese dream. So it says that Japan is 10 years ahead of us when it comes to technology, and there is even such a thing as an obsession with trains, I believe. And Mr. Miyazaki himself has won several, and one of the most beautiful scenes in the history of the cinema includes one. And it's not at all, your films have always had a lot of 19th century references, and we can see that a bit in Nausicaa, even if it's a lot more imaginary than your other works.
Yes, that's not completely wrong, although probably a little bit exaggerated. I personally have indeed a lot of love for this era, and my movies are legacy to this joyful but somehow bittersweet atmosphere. I had to portray as much as possible what I was surrounded by as a child, especially the people. And the relationship with my characters is simple, happy, or bittersweet. They're human.
Yeah, I could feel a lot of love from your movie. Love of nature, family, and the friendship are simply beautiful, even if sometimes it's bittersweet. Nausicaa had all that. It's beautiful. In a way, even Lastel, the villain, was only misguided. She did what she threw, and she had to do for her people. It's a sad film, but also heartwarming. But
I understand exactly what you mean. I guess you could call this the 19th century nostalgia.
Yeah, in a way, yes. Even though I mostly lived during the 20th century, I still have some experiences in my parents' stories deep in my memory and in my heart, and technological progress was also a huge part of it.
But don't you think that technology has its downside too? Look, like there's a lot of problem with it, pollution, war, and some people fear that technology could become a threat to us once it becomes sentient. By the way, there are exactly the themes seen in Nausicaa, aren't they? Obviously, the toxic forest represents pollution. There is war between nature and between men, and also that huge robot that threatens to kill everyone at the end.
Yes, I did make it pretty obvious, I guess. I do think that humans are often wrong about the way they deal with the problems. Instead of trying to understand the problem and solve it slowly but permanently, they just look for the most obvious answer and they try to eradicate it. So, in Nausicaa, for example, humans decided to destroy the toxic forest in order to survive. However, the forest became even more toxic because of what they did and because of their endless wars, and eradicating the forest made the animals their mortal enemy. And so the answer was there all along. The forest should be kept alive because over time it was the actual solution to purify the air and save all living beings. So yeah, I think human stupidity often has no limits.
Now that's a very similar theme to another one of your movies, The Princess Mononoke. So the animals also try to destroy humanity because they were a threat to them.
Yes.
We can see that you have a deep love of nature as well. The big insects even have human characteristic. It's like they can think for themselves. Even the toxic forest, in a way, it's like being toxic is its revenge on man, and the animals try to destroy the humans to survive, and some of them form a friendship with Nausicaa.
Yeah, like the big insect and the little Tito. That's so cute, by the way. Tito is my favorite character in. How would you define Nausicaa's role in relation to society? How is society in this film? What is Miyazaki's message?
She is supposed to guide the society. The kingdoms in Nausicaa are quite static, so the people follow the rulers and accept the situation. The kingdoms, some of them use firearms, some use technology, some respect nature, even if it's toxic. And finally, this film is a mirror of our society when everyone thinks they have the best solutions and wants to impose it on others. And Miyazaki's films' endings are very similar. Tell me if I'm wrong, but they are often many deaths, and the viewer has a bitter taste because deep down he's afraid that men will make the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And the ending of Nausicaa is very similar to another movie, so The Princess Mononoke. And generally speaking, these two films evolve in the same direction, and we can put them in parallel on many subjects. So the friendship between men and animals, the respect for nature, men tearing themselves apart, the sense of sacrifice, and this famous poetry of your own.
Yes. Yeah, I would say the two films are pretty similar. So I made them in a period where ecology was a big question, and it's common to both stories. So they basically deal with the same moral theme, which has always been sort of a guideline in my work. So they address my greatest fear, which is that man's behavior towards nature will end up being his downfall. And at the same time, I still put in a glimmer of hope in them because I do believe in humanity.
You talked about your character being human, but isn't Nausicaa too perfect to be human? It's like she has no weakness.
Well, I'd say heroism is a central role in my films in Nausicaa, but I wouldn't say that she is perfect. She's also afraid, and I'd say she's more like a model for us to be. So she sacrifices herself for humanity, she gives them back the confidence in the future and the human hope and to fight against hate. So these characters who put the duty and the lives of others and nature about themselves are what we should be like. And Nausicaa is a bird woman who detaches herself from her own happiness, from her life. She is, as I like to say, bigger than life. But yeah, so the other characters, of course, are also not important and not inherently bad. The humans who also make mistakes, and some of them are there to catch them by reaching out.
Yes, according to me, in Miyazaki's work, the smallest character is important and reflects the complexity of the human being. But there are often two main characters, a man and a girl, and all the other characters revolve around them and represent the population in the different places in society.
Yes, and the leading role is always given to a woman. This is here we can see that the feminist character of Miyazaki. So Nausicaa is still a child, but also a young woman forced to grow up too fast of the circumstances.
Yet, yes, that's how I feel. Nausicaa is forced to take responsibility by taking a central role in the conflict. She is a strong woman, like all the main characters.
Yes, I do like strong women, as you call, as you call them, strong women. And it appeals to independence. Nausicaa is never afraid to follow her ideals, to go against the tide. And I think that's how I express my feminism. Women and characters in general fight for their ideals. Like Nausicaa, Nasa, Kushana, but also men like Yupa and yes.
Yet there are powerful women, sometimes antagonistic, but their characters are not 100% bad. Kushana, for example, has good intentions. She wants to save her people in her own way.
Indeed, and there is no strictly evil character. And by the way, we haven't talked about it yet, but the main character's beauty is never one of his or her main attributes and is never an important element of the story. And this is really the case in youth films such as Disney.
Yeah, that's true. So our program is coming to an end. Do you have any remark?
Yes, to conclude, I would say that these films are aimed at young and old alike. They have a poetic, magical and symbolic dimension that Mr. Miyazaki will describe better than I can. And yes, they are deal with social themes like illness, old age, environmental issues, feminism, honor. All these essential subjects can allow the children to develop their view on the world, their benevolence and their imagination.
Yes, indeed, the spiritual dimension, my relationship with nature, it all translates into a certain poetry. I like the symbolism, to use it. I evoke it through sensations, impressions, relying on images, music, the script to show its spiritual essence with all the team.
I thank you for your presence, Miyazaki. You are extremely inspiring and your presence really helped us to understand the spiritual aspect of your film, which make generations of children dream. Of course, I don't forget you, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. Your analysis was very relevant and allowed us to enrich and nuance the subject. And I strongly advise the public to see this masterpiece, which cannot be described as a simple cult film, but as a sublime film.